Okay. Okay. So today we are going to talk about a concept called interface. So interface, we'll see what is the definition of the interface, how to define the interface, how to implement the interface. See, in simple terms, interface means it's like a blueprint of the class. So it's like a blueprint of a class. So interface will contain variables and methods, but these variables are constant. You can use them. You cannot change the value of that variable. And you have functions, but it doesn't have the body of the function. The interface is like a blueprint of a class. It will contain variables which are constant. You can use them. You cannot change the value of those variables. And you have functions where the body of the function is not implemented. Only you have the function declaration. So why we are using this means the interface in Java, it is a mechanism to achieve the abstraction. So that's why we are using this. That's why we are using this interface. So you should know why we are using interface. Why? Because to achieve abstraction, uh, to implement this multiple inheritance feature, to implement the multiple inheritance feature in Java, we will be using the interfaces. So this is regarding the definition of the interface. Using the keyword interface, you can fully abstract a class interface from its implementation. Meaning, you can just write the function definition. You can just write the function definition. I mean, function declaration. Then the logic for that function can be written by the classes which is going to use the interface. So this is like somewhat similar to abstract method. So um, so the what is the next point? Interface. You can specify what a class must do, but not how it does. Means using interface, you'll just give the function name. It is up to the classes to decide how that function can be included or how the logic can be included. So once you define an interface, you can use any number of classes which can make use of that interface. So one class can implement n number of interfaces. So if you want to implement an interface means the class must write the logic for the functions that are there inside that interfaces. So the logic to be written is dependent on that class itself. So by using this interface feature, Java will allow us to use one interface, multiple methods, aspect of polymorphism. So first thing is we'll just generalize. Now what does the interface? So for example, you assume that we have an interface by the name drawable. So there is an interface called drawable. So what this interface can contain means it can contain variables, it can contain function declaration, it can contain function declaration. So these variables are constant. You can use them, you cannot change them. Assuming we will write one variable called x is equal to 5. So here you can make use of this variable x, but you cannot change the value of this variable. Like you cannot assign the value of x to 7. If you try to do that, you will get an error because it is constant. So we have some functions like we'll assume that there is a function called draw. So only function declaration is allowed. Function declaration is allowed. You cannot write the logic for this function. So this is how the interface will be written. This is how the interface can be written. Now if there is a class, that wants to implement this interface means it has to give the logic for this function called draw. So that is how the interface works. So the interface will contain methods which will not have body, which will not have logic, and it will contain variables that are constant. So these are the components that are there inside an interface. So this is regarding the definition. This is regarding the definition of the interface. So now, what is the syntax? What is the syntax to define an interface? So the syntax is same like the class itself. So it is, the syntax is similar to the class thing. So if you want to declare a class, you'll write the class name. No, if you want to create an interface, means the first thing will be interface name. So this is the interface name. Then the components that are there inside the interface, the components that are there inside the interface. So it can contain functions. So what is a function? A function will have a return type. A function will have a return type. A function will have a name. A function will have a name, and um, it can have parameters also. It can have parameters also, but you are not writing the logic. Only function declaration will be there. Similarly, uh, it can contain variables. That variables are constant. So how to write that? Means what is the type of the variable, what is the name of the variable, what is the name of the variable, and what is the value of that variable. So these are the components that are there in interface. For example, see, I'll write one interface. This is one interface example. So interface name. So I'll just erase this. I'll write an example based on this interface. So I will name my interface as drawable. So drawable is the name of my interface. So this interface contains one function given by the name print. So print is the name of the function, and it will contain one variable given by the name x, which is 5. So like this, I can declare an interface. Now there is an interface called drawable. Now there is an interface called drawable. It is having one function called print function, and one variable called x. You can use the value of that x, but you cannot change the value of that x. So this is how this is how the interface is declared. And here also you can provide the access. Even you can make the access also. So this access, in the sense, the public access or the default access, which we have studied in the previous session. Oh, you can add that also. But if you're not writing anything, it will have the default access. If you're not writing anything, it will have the default access. And also, the fields, see the methods. By default, these methods are public and abstract. By default, the functions are public and abstract, and variables are public, static, final. Because you cannot change the value of the variable, that's why final. You need not create an object. It's a static variable, so you're making it a static, and you have to provide the access for all the classes which will implement this interface. So public access. So by default, the functions are public, having public access, and they are the abstract functions, and variables are having public access. They are static and final. So this is regarding the components. So this is regarding how to define or how to declare an interface. So this is a general method. So this is the general method. Um, so even you can make the access can be public also, so that anyone can use that interface. And also you can observe that we are not using any semicolon. You are not using any semicolon. We're not using any semicolon at at the end of the flower bracket. So and other things are similar. Other things are common, just like the classes. Here only difference is the variables are constants. So it is similar to classes. The variables are constant. You cannot make changes to them, but you can use them. And the functions are declared. That's all. The function name will be declared. The function implementation will be written somewhere. So by default, the variables are final, static, and they have public access. They have public access, and methods are by default. The functions are public and abstract. So this is regarding how to how to define the interface. So this is the defining the interface. After defining the interface, how do you use them? Once you have defined the interface, you want to use them. So now previously I defined an interface by the name by the name drawable by the name drawable, and it contained two things: one function by the name print and one variable by the name x is equal to 5, where x was the value of the variable and 5, x was the name of the variable and 5 was its value. So now this is defining the interface, defining the interface. Now, how do you implement this? How do you implement in the sense, how do you use them? So once the interface has been defined, you can use classes. You can use classes to implement them. You can use classes to implement that interface. So what is the format? What is the syntax? What is the syntax means? For example, I have classes like A, B. So now these two classes wants to implement this interface drawable. So how do I do that? So for that, the syntax is class, class name, class A. So now this is my class A. This is my class B. We have two classes, and those two classes are interested in implementing the interface which is given by the name drawable. So that it wants to implement that interface drawable. So once the interface is defined, I told you that classes can implement them. So how to implement them means, I just need to use these two words: class A implements implements interface name drawable. Class B implements drawable. So this is the syntax. This is the syntax to implement an interface. So this is familiar, right? So when you want to create a relationship between two classes A and B, so what I will do, class B, if I assume A as a super class B extends A. The same way, if you are using if you want to implement interface means, you will be using the keyword implements. So when the interface needs to be implemented, you will use the keyword implements in front of the class which is implementing that. Here class A is implementing the drawable interface, so that's why I'm writing those two words: class A implements drawable interface, class B implements drawable interface. So this is a syntax. So generally it will be like, what is the general syntax? Class, class name, class, class name, keyword will be implements, interface name, interface name. So this is a general syntax. Here there is the one which is given by the class name will implement the interface given by the interface name. This class name can be A, B, C. This interface can be anything: drawable, printable, showable, like this. I'm just giving you the name of the interface. So did you get this? Whether this concept is clear? What the interface will contain, how to declare the interface, how to use the interface. Is it making any sense? Whether you're able to get this? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, see, this is the simple one. Okay. So now I will write, we have two interfaces. Now we have two interfaces. Okay. Interface, I will call this as drawable. I will call this as drawable. So now I will only I will just think there is only one function called print function. There is one function called print function. print function. So there is one more interface. This is interface 2. Interface, I'll call it as showable. So some name, that's all. See, this is nothing to do with thing. I'm just writing the name, and this will contain a function called, it will contain a function called show function is there. So now I want to use two interfaces, interface 1, interface 2. How I can do means, uh, one class, there is one class called a, so that class can implement two interfaces also. How means, just implements the name of the interfaces in comma, drawable, comma, showable. So now this class A can use two interfaces. It can use a drawable interface. It can use showable interface also. So one class can implement more than one interfaces. The only thing is the interfaces should be separated with comma. So here I given an example where the class is implementing two interfaces. The class is implementing two interfaces. Then mm, those two interfaces must be separated by comma. Those two interfaces must be separated by comma. So this is the um, methodology that is being followed in implementing multiple interfaces. So this part is done. So the next thing is, sir, um, we are only providing the declaration in interfaces, no? So now actual logic for this print function, see, the actual logic for the print function and the show function should be written inside this class, inside this class A. So first we'll just talk about one interface, then we can extend that one, then we can extend that. So this class A assume that this class A is implementing drawable interface. Now this drawable interface contains a function called print, no? So print function should be the logic for that print function should be written here. So I'm writing the logic. Otherwise you will get an error, system dot out dot println some random message, I'll write some message. So this is a drawable interface. Like that I will just give the message. And also one important thing, so here you should add the keyword public, otherwise you'll get an error. So whenever you are implementing the method of an whenever you are writing the logic for a method of an interface, so that method should be prefixed with public keyword. It should be prefixed with public keyword, otherwise you will get an error, because by default we know that the methods that are there in the interface are public by default. So that's why when you're implementing that method, you have to use this keyword public, otherwise you will get an error. Similarly, the same thing. Similarly, we have one more class called B. So that B class is implementing interface, drawable, and showable. So now, now we should provide the logic for both the functions, print functions, because drawable is having print function. So I'll write the logic for that. I'll just write the logic for that, void print, then some message, that's all, system dot out dot println. So this is drawable interface, like that I will tell. So but I know when I'm implementing, I should add the keyword public to that function. So now for drawable class, it contained print function. I've written the logic for that. But I'm also using the showable interface also. But for this showable interface, we have a method called show method. So I should write the logic for that show method also. So I'll write the logic for show method also. Logic in the sense the body of the function. System dot out dot println. So this is a showable interface, like that I will write. So here it should be public. So like this. So whenever you are implementing an interface, so all the methods that are there in that interface should be provided with the body or the logic. So that thing you should remember. That thing you should remember. This is the one point. So if an interface contains three functions, means you have to write the logic for three functions also. Here I'm explaining with only one function, no, one function. So if we have functions like add, subtract, then then for this class A should write the logic for add function also. It has to write the logic for subtract function also. So whatever classes, if it contains three functions, means logic should be written for three functions like that. Um, and also and also and also one more thing, the class can contain. So now the class can contain uh, its own function also in addition to the interface functions. So for example, in this interface called drawable, we have print function. No, in addition to this print function, a class A can have its own function. So assume that we have function called display A. So this is the function which belongs to class A, which belongs to class A. So that is the one point you can consider. So in addition to the functions that are there in interface, a class can have its own functions. A class can have its own functions. So this is regarding um, the interfaces. So now this is the theory behind this is the theory part behind this interface. Now we can now we can now we can go with the examples. Now we can go with the programming examples. So now so this is the theory behind that. um, After that we have nested interface. We'll look into that later. One second, I'll just close. Okay, these windows are not necessary. I'll just close them. So now, so I just created one class called demo class. So here I'll execute this. So now the first thing is, how do you define an interface? How do you define an interface in Java? So how to define an interface in Java means um, we should provide the interface with. First thing is, I want to define an interface in Java. First, I'll write the keyword interface. Then the name of the interface. The name of the interface, I'll just write it as printable. So simply the one which we have which we have discussed now, the name of the interface is printable. So now this interface can contain functions, but no logic, only the function declaration. So return type of the function and function name. Return type of the function and function name. Not only one function, it can contain multiple functions. It can contain multiple functions. It can contain print function, it can contain show function, but I'll just start with the simple function. So after that, even it can contain variables also. It can contain variables also. So it can contain variables. So now, okay. So it can contain variables, it can contain functions, it can contain functions also. So if so next thing is, I've defined I've defined an interface. So this is the definition of interface. So definition is fine. How do I use that? How do I use that interface? So how can I use that interface means, for example, there is a class called demo, because I've created the file by the name demo. No, so that's why I'll call this as demo class. So now there is a class called demo. The class demo wants to use this interface. The class demo wants to use this interface. So we'll just simplify this. This interface contains only one function. It contains only one function, print function. It contains only one function, print function. Now I want to use this interface. So in order to use this, I have to use the keyword implements the name of the interface. The name of the interface is printable. I'll just copy and I will paste that. So after writing that, it is my responsibility to write the logic for the print function. To write the logic for print function. So I'll write print, void, print. Now I'll write the logic for that. Void print system dot out dot print. It's taking some time. It is loading. System dot out dot print ln. So this is a method. This is a method of this is a method that was present. Okay, this is a method or this method belongs to. So this method belongs to uh, printable interface. I just want to type some message, that's all. Interface. So like this. But even then also we are getting error. Even then also we are getting error because I told you that by default you have to give the public access. So now you are not getting the error. See, if I remove this word, you can see a red color bulb on the left hand side of the line number corresponding to that. So the why? Because the methods which are there in the interface are public by default. So after this, I'll just write the main function public static void main public static void main. You just need to pass the parameter string ar gs. Okay, string argument. So after this, sir, how do I access, sir? How do I access that? You can access by creating the object. So I'll just create an object for this class called demo. D is equal to new demo. So I will create an object. So object D is that object which belongs to demo class. I'll just call the function d dot print. D dot print. So in this way, in this way, I can run the program. So I will get I'll get the output as this method belongs to a printable interface. So I mean, I just want to tell that you are able to access that function. So this is one of the kind. This is one of the example. So now um, we'll keep on adding. We'll keep on adding. We can keep on adding the changes to that. We can keep on adding the changes to that. For example. For example, what we can do means uh, I will write one more function called void show. I'll write one more function called void show. So this is the print method I wrote. This is the print method. This is a print method of printable interface. So now again you can see the error. Again you are seeing the error. Why? Because this printable interface contains two functions. It contains two functions, but I'm writing the logic for only one function. So it contains two functions, but I'm writing the logic or I'm implementing only one function. So that's why I am getting an error. So it contains print function, it contains show function, but this class demo, it is giving me the logic or it is writing the logic only for the print function. So how do I overcome this? How to overcome this means write the logic for show function also. Void show. After this, uh, I'll just copy this. It will save some time. This is the I'll just write it as a show method of printable interface. So you should prefix the keyword public. You should prefix the keyword public. So public void show. So now you can see now you are not getting any error because this interface contained two functions and I was able to write the logic for two functions. One was the print function and one was the show function in the class which is implementing that interface. Now the demo class is implementing that interface. So I'm writing the logic for both the classes. So that's why uh, I will not get any error. So I can execute this d dot print, d dot show, d dot print, d dot show. It is working. It is, it will work, build, run. So you can see this is the, we're getting two different outputs. This is the print method, belongs to a print method. This is the show method message, which belongs to the show method. So one example. So this is another variation to this. And also, and also this interface can be used by multiple classes, multiple classes. For example, I'll write a class called A. I'll write a class called A, and I'll write a class called B. I'll write two classes. We have two classes. We have two classes, class A, class B. Now, these classes, class A and class B, they want to use this interface called printable. So how to do that means implements 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 printable, and even class B wants to use that interface. So I'll write it as printable. So now this class printable contains a print method. I want to write logic for this, void print. Okay. After that, system dot out dot print ln. So what I will do means, this is available. This is we are inside. I'll write it as we are inside a class print method. We are inside a class print method, and the same thing. So here I should add keyword public. I should add the keyword public. The same thing I will copy. The same thing I will copy, and one change what I will make is I'll just make it as B. See, here you should observe one point. Here you should observe one point. See, the logic can be anything. The logic is dependent on the class which is implementing. Okay. So for example, can be like if I'm using an add function, if I'm writing an add function, if I'm implementing an interface which has a function called add, here I can perform the addition of two numbers. Here I can perform the addition of three numbers. So logic, it is dependent on the classes. Even though it is implementing the same interface, even though it is implementing the same interface printable, class A can write, for example, take an example of sorting. Take an example of sorting. So there is a function. So if there is a function instead of print, assume that there is a function called sort function. Now class A can perform a logic to write the selection sort, to perform the sorting using selection sort. The class B can write a logic to perform the sorting using merge sort. So the implementation of the function, it is dependent on the classes. So the class can decide. So here I have print functions, but I can write different logic for both the functions. So that I just wanted to tell. So that's why I am writing this example. Two classes can implement. See, for example, I will ask two students. I'll just call two students. I'll just give them the sheet of paper and I will tell them write a program to sort 10 numbers. So one will write the program to sort 10 numbers using selection sort. The other one will write the program to sort the 10 numbers using merge sort. The same way. The function is same. The function is same, but you can write the logic based on your application or based on your requirement. So after this, how to execute this means these functions are not needed. I'll just remove that. So I'll create objects of two classes. I'll just create objects of two classes. So this class demo, I don't want this. Now I'll create objects of class A, class B. A I will call it as, this is a object of class A, object of class B, object of class A, object of class B, and A dot print, A dot print, B dot print. So I'll save this. I'll run this. So you can see we are inside A class print method. We are inside B class print method. So this is a one class can use, multiple classes can use the same interface, but the logic depends on the class which is implementing it. So this is one thing. And uh, and now now the second variation to this. So this is one variation. No. So now what other changes are there? What other changes are there means I can create two interfaces. One interface by the name printable, and the other interface by the name I'll write it as showable. So then I will write a method inside this as show method. So now now one class can implement multiple interfaces. How to do that means in front of the class name, write the implements keyword followed by the interfaces which you want to use. I want to use printable. I want to use showable. Printable comma showable. So one class is implementing multiple interfaces. One class is implementing multiple interfaces. So now write the logic for that. Now write the logic for that. So what is the logic? Public void, public void. One is a print method, one is a print method. Some dot out dot some dot dot out dot print. This is printable interface. Printable interface. I'll just write it as printable interface. Okay. Again the same thing. Printable interface. Here I'll make the function as show. Showable interface. Okay. So see now what this example is doing means here one class called demo, it is implementing two interfaces, printable interface, showable interface. So now two interfaces. Now the methods that are there in these interfaces must be implemented. So printable contains print functions. So I am writing the logic for that. Showable function contains show function. I'm writing the logic for that. So this is how you can create that. So after this, I'll create an object demo class demo. No, demo d is equal to new demo. So I'll just write the logic for that. Um, then we have two methods now, d dot print method, d dot show method. Save, run. So see, you can see that showable interface, printable interface. So this is another way. This is another way of like one class is able to implement multiple interfaces. But in Java, you remember that one class can extend only one more class. Like one class can extend one class. You cannot extend more than one class in Java, but you can implement more than one interface in Java. So this is how the multiple inheritance can be achieved. This is how the multiple inheritance can be achieved in Java. So, so these are some of the examples like how to define the interface, how to implement the interface, and what precautions you should take. Like the methods should be prefixed with the keyword public, and also one more thing which I forgot now. And one more thing is a class can have its own method in addition to the methods. In addition to the methods of interface class, it a class can have its own method. So I'll just modify this. So now just remove this. That's all. So I'll write method. Just write it as demo class method. Hmm. So now see here. Now this demo class is implementing the interface printable. So it has a function called print function which belongs to the interface printable. So I'm writing the logic for that. So after that, it can have its own function. So this demo class is having a function called show. So this is of demo class function. It is having its own function in addition to the uh, interface function. So after that, I'm just calling that. I'll save this and I will run this. See, that's all. So one concept, you can have your own class functions in addition to the interface functions. So this is regarding the interface. So I'll just stop the class now. So the remaining, we have few more concepts like nesting interfaces, how to use variables in the interfaces, which we can see in the coming classes. Any doubts? Any doubts regarding today's class?
No, sir.
Okay, fine, fine. I'll stop the class then. See, till